Good afternoon, folks. We hope you've had a great day. This is our final panel for Saturday at Granite-City Comic Con 2016, and it is a doozy. We have none other than Robert Llewellyn. I'm sure to most of you, Robert needs no introduction, but he's best known for his house-proud mechanoid Crichton, as well as Scrappy Challenge and the web series Carpool. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask Rob a few questions myself, and then I'll invite you guys to come up and ask Rob a few questions. So if you have a question, when we get to it, if you just want to line up down the middle there, and we'll get a microphone for you. Are you enjoying Aberdeen?
I am. It's very wonderful to be here. It's lovely to meet all the Aberdonians. Everyone's been lovely.
And you're returning to Red Dwarf for an 11th season very soon.
We have already finished season 11 and 12.
And 12 airing now, or is 12?
No, 11 airs in, we hope September, from sometime in September. We haven't got a firm date yet.
And that'll be on Dave.
That will be on Dave. Red Dwarf on Dave. That's how you have to say it. I'm contractually obliged. Yeah. I can't say Red Dwarf on Dave. No. Red Dwarf on Dave.
Great. Any fantastic stories you can tell us from the most recent shoot? What was it like to get back together with the band?
We had enormous fun. It was great fun, and because I was kind of dreading it, because I thought a man my age shouldn't be covered in rubber unless unless you're a Tory MP, in which case it's it was it was really good fun. We had an amazing time. The only thing I am allowed to say, because Doug Naylor mentioned it before we even started the series, that there is an episode where everyone has been Crichtoned. And it was quite a learning experience for the rest of the cast. So there is and it was an extraordinary episode to make, where everyone in the episode, including a lot of extras, a lot of guest stars, are all mechanoids. There's only mechanoids in it, and it is just you will not believe what a mechanoid cat and Lister look like. And you would not believe how miserable a mechanoid Rimmer looks. It is absolutely extraordinary. So they all had masks made, and they were all really nice to me for the remaining 8 weeks. I mean, Craig said, "Bobby, I always thought you were a bit mad, but now you wear that all the time. I know, you're crazy, man." And I said that very carefully because there was a lot more expletives in the original.
Craig's actually up in Aberdeen next month.
He is? Yeah. Craig Charles Funk and Soul. No, it would be great. I think it's all sold out already, but he's awfully good at playing records in a discotheque. I went to see him doing it in Sydney. When we were in Australia a couple of years ago, and I went to a nightclub, which made me feel like a 90-year-old vicar. And when he asked me to say something on it, which was so embarrassing, I think you should all go home, it's awfully noisy here. It's terribly noisy, and you're all up too late.
Obviously, you're probably best known for Red Dwarf, but there was a big stint on Scrap Heap Challenge as well. Is there any sort of standout stories from the Scrap Heap Challenge days that you could share with us?
Very many of them. I mean, the one that was always staying in my mind was, I don't know how many of you saw it, but the flight special we did in 2002, which was to commemorate the first flight of the Wright brothers and all that stuff. And we shot that in America, 3 American, French, British teams. And always when we did international versions of Scrap Heap with teams from around the world, the Brits would come last and everything would fall to bits, and it was normal, and we were brave, but we struggled on, and this was quite weird. We all felt a bit weird because the British team won. That's odd, we don't know how to deal with that. And because the plane that they built, that the British team built, actually flew, and we had permission from the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA, and we had a proper bloke there with a proper job, proper civil servant American, who was very strict about it, and he gave them a safety lecture and he gave them the safety briefing, and we were in the desert, and they're only allowed to fly to 50 feet. That was the limit that they were allowed to fly, and we thought, this isn't going to be a problem, because they're not going to get more than a foot off the ground if we're lucky. And the French one bounced about 2 feet in the air, and that did pretty well. And the American one just about flew, but then kind of nosedived, but thankfully no one was hurt. And the British plane took off unexpectedly. They didn't think it was going to fly at all. And it kept climbing, and the guy who was in the pilot seat, and I'm being generous to call it a pilot seat, it was a children's beach deck chair tied on with string on a piece of wood, and he was steering with a bit of broom handle with string on it that was the control system, and he had the throttle for the engine in his teeth because he couldn't control the plane, and so the throttle was that's how a man called Billy Brooks, total insane nutter. His day job is hang glider test pilot. And I just want to give advice to any young women here. If you meet a man whose job is a hang glider test pilot, he's not going to be around for long. But Billy Brooks, as far as I know, is still living somehow. It's a miracle. But he flew that plane, and we had a spotter plane with us that was one, you know when you see amazing footage of a goose flying and it's really close up, and it's one of the planes that films out, it's an electric glider with a big camera on the bottom, and it can fly very slowly, so it can fly with birds. And they took off once this plane went up in the air, and we went, we've got to get footage of it in the air. So they took off, and they were our only radio contact with them. We couldn't talk to Billy, he was off on his flight. And he flew over us, he was circling around us like that and waving, sitting in a deck chair going, and we could tell he was shouting, we couldn't hear him. And the director was just pumping out a torrent of expletives because we didn't have cameras ready and we weren't ready to film it, it was all a nightmare. And then the radio guy said, the man from the FAA walked back into his pickup truck and just held his head in his hands because he could tell from looking how high things were. I couldn't tell. 50 feet, that's like really high. But then we heard from the radio from the guys in the little spotter plane, and they said, we're waving at him and he just keeps waving back. We're pointing at the ground and he's not taking any notice. I said, tell him to come down, tell him to come down. Well, we're trying to, but he keeps climbing. What height are you? 2,900 feet. He got up to 2,900 feet on a piece of wood with some string. And then he landed safely. And then right at the very end, when we'd finished filming everything, and I was talking to Billy, because he is bonkers, he said, it was extraordinary, I really didn't think it would work. I made a model of the plane before we came out, and he had a little balsa wood model of it. He said, look what happens to this, and he threw it, and it went, whip. That's what he was expecting. So yeah, that was a memorable day.
I think we'll throw it open to you guys now. If anyone has any questions for Robert, if you'd just like to line up here, don't be shy. First person is always the greatest one.
The greenest one.
Do you have any favourite or standout carpals that just stick out in your mind?
Standout couples. Well, I mean, certainly the most frightening was Sir Patrick Stewart, because I'd never met him before, and I drove down the drive to his house, which is quite a posh place. It's not like, he doesn't live in a scruffy bungalow. He lives in quite a posh house, and I went, oh my God, this is really frightening. This is like a proper actor with no hair, who's quite scary. And I drove into front of his house, and the door opened, and said, come in for a cup of tea, I've got the kettle on, and he was the most charming, lovely bloke I've ever met. He was really sweet. So that was kind of memorable, because you know, the first time I met him was literally kind of when he did it. And I drove him down the post office, and he got some milk. So it's all very normal.
How did you get into Red Dwarf in the first place?
Sort of by accident. I mean, the way I describe it is that I was in a back alley behind the palace of show business, and I leant against the door, and no one had locked it, and I fell in. It was kind of like that. It really wasn't my intention. I wrote a play that was at the Edinburgh Festival in 1988 that won prizes and was a big success, and it was about a robot, but not like Crichton, and because he was a robo-yuppie. And because you have to be a certain age to even know what a yuppie was, but a yuppie was just an annoying pillock with red braces who had a mobile phone the size of a house brick, who shouted into it going, buy now, sell, it's a free market economy, it's going to boom and never go wrong. And they were wrong. And they were pillocks. But so he was a robot yuppie, and then the producer of Red Dwarf at that time, a man called Paul Jackson, saw that and said, do you want to be in Red Dwarf? And that play was commissioned as a sitcom for Channel 4, And so I said, I'm just too busy and I don't want to be typecast as a robot. So that just showed what a pillock I was. And thankfully, when I met the two writers, Rob and Doug, who were just amazing, I got on with them really well, and I said yes. I thought I'd have a RoboCop helmet on and do sort of robot walking and be a robot. And then, and I didn't know anything about the makeup. The one episode of Red Dwarf I'd never seen was the one with Crichton, the original Crichton episode with David Ross. So I didn't know that they were going to cover my head in foam rubber for 27 years. I had no idea. So yes, by accident, that's what I did.
So for you to kind of answer my question, I was going to ask, like, how long did it take to get into like full crime makeup, and like how did they create that kind of look with like squarish head?
Right. So when I started working on it in 1989, it was about 5 hours to put the makeup on in the morning. And it was made of 2 pieces, so it was kind of a front bit and a back bit. And it was glued on. And the glue and the foam in those days was much cruder than it is now, so the technology has improved a great deal. So it took a long time to put on. The first day's filming ever was a scene that is in Red Dwarf. It's in Marooned, and it's when there's a very short shot of Crichton pulling a sledge with Cat in it, and Cat's whipping Crichton and saying, "Mush, mush!" And we filmed that in a big warehouse in Liverpool with a fan, a great big fan that they do, a wind machine, which is actually a car engine with a big propeller on it, going, and it blows wind at about 60 miles an hour. So if you stand up in front of it, you get blown over. It's pretty strong, very noisy. And they put soap flakes into the wind to make it look like a blizzard. And my eyes were glued open. I couldn't blink, because it was the first time they'd done the makeup, so my eyes were like that, and I was going, this is day one. What have I signed up to? Because it was so, and weirdly, if your eyes are glued open and you can't blink, they don't hurt as much as you think, and if soap flakes blow into it, they sting at first, but then it just foams up. So I had foamy eyes on day one, and it's downhill ever since. But, so that was rather a strong memory. So it's improved over the years slightly, so it now takes about 2 hours to put the makeup on in the morning. And there used to be a really long difference, a big long time gap between me and the rest of the cast. So I'd been in there like 4 hours, and then Craig had come in, he already had his locks, so they'd bit of powder, and he'd go, "You're right, Bobby, I'm just going to go and have my breakfast. See you in about 2 hours." Chris would walk in, H on, job done. Danny would walk in. Danny always had a bit longer to get his hair set in that way. Now that gap between my makeup and the rest of the cast is reduced considerably, the difference between us, because now Danny's in makeup for about an hour and a half to get his huge wig on, because Danny hasn't got any hair, ladies and gentlemen. You can see the proof of that in Death in Paradise. That's the real Danny. Craig has a lot of help in the chin department with makeup, and he has a lot more makeup than he used to. Yeah, make me look a bit younger, if you can. I had 19 gallons of whiskey last night, and it's still with me. That's not true, not 19 gallons, 18 gallons. And Chris has a lot of hair help to make him rimified. So they're all in makeup for hours now, and I'm in there less time, but it's still quite challenging for all of us. Yeah.
So they're still long days?
They're still very long days, yeah. So the longest day I think I had the mask, because I don't notice, but the makeup people are very good and they keep a record of it. So an amazing man called Sangeet who did my makeup this year, and I had it on for 14 hours one day this year, which is quite a long time to be covered in, at my age. You know, you think, move on. Get a proper job in Downton Abbey as a butler. No, I would pay money not to be in Downton Abbey. But yeah, so it has got better, and I can eat now with the new mask in the latest series. It isn't absorbent like the old one; it's made of silicone rubber, so I can, if I get a bit of chip juice on my chin, they can wipe it off with a wet wipe. There's always a lot of wet wipes in Red Dwarf. I'm constantly being wet wiped. Thank you.
Hi, Robert. You, as the newest cast member at the time, were the only actor invited to go to the US pilot for Red Dwarf. I was just wondering how the rest of the cast treated you as the new boy on the block, and then going off to Sun California.
I mean, I suppose by the time I did that, I'd made three series, so I was less of a new boy on the block. But Craig called me the new boy till about 2006. So you know, he doesn't anymore. He doesn't do it. I think because we're all so old and knackered, it doesn't count anymore. But yeah, well, there were some comments were passed. But I mean, it wasn't. They knew it wasn't me that said, "Don't take the rest of them, just me," because I don't think that would have worked. I think the American producers thought I was American. I don't know. I don't really know how come they wanted me to do it, but they did. And it was, you know, an amazing adventure for me to go and do a proper American TV pilot at that time when, you know, and one of the other actors in that show, Craig Bierko, who I'm still mates with, who played Lister, had a script that he was given, and because it was they used to have I don't know if they still do it. They had a pilot season, and they'd shoot hundreds of pilots, and like 2 of them would be made into a series. And he got this one, which was about 3 guys that lived in one flat and 3 women that lived in another flat, and they were all friends, and it was called Friends. And he was up to play the part of Joey. And he said, "Do you want to read this?" "I don't know. You're experienced. You're an experienced actor. Could you read it?" And I read half this script, and it's so pony, so boring.
3 people live in this flat and 3 other people live in another flat.
So I said, "I think it's crap. That's never going to fly." And he didn't do it. But he didn't. I don't think he got the part. I don't think it was like me saying, "Don't do it." But it was weird when you think that I read the pilot script of Friends, which was piloted the same year, I think. And I don't know what happened to any of those actors. None of them did very well. They certainly didn't make much money out of doing it. Jesus. I mean, that's the thing that is so absurd. When, I had one morning where I was I'm not going to say hot property, lukewarm property in Hollywood, because I had a sitcom that I was in, and I didn't have an agent in Los Angeles, and suddenly you don't even know, but you're giving off this scent that agents can smell, and my phone just rang non-stop. "Bob, have you got representation in LA? Because you need it. This town is hard." And all these, I had lunches and power breakfasts and brunches, and you know, with all these posh agency people who were all definitely going to get in touch with me again next week. And then I got back to England and my phone was silent. It has been ever since. So it was a great adventure for me, but I'm very glad it didn't take off.
Robert, a couple of years ago we did the YouTube series Carpool. Who was the most surprising guest that you had in your car?
Other than the previous one.
Yes, the most surprising guest. I'm trying to think who. Oh, actually, I have to say Paul Daniels. I think because he, you know, I mean, it was very sad his recent passing, but because he reminded me of my dad. So he did such naff, awful double entendre jokes non-stop, and he just cracked me up. I mean, he did brilliant close-up magic, and I wasn't like a massive Paul Daniels fan, but I'd met him a couple of times at the Beeb, and he was you know, charming bloke. I think he kind of calmed down in his latter years, and he was just a delight to spend time with, and he was a very, very funny guy. He really made me laugh, and he did do brilliant, because he did a trick in the car where he had, you know, you pick a card, any card, all that, you're going to like it, all that stuff. I was going, oh God, this is so cheesy. And I picked a card, and then he went, it's the 9 of hearts or something. And I went, oh my God, he's got it wrong. You know, it's not, he can't do the magic anymore, poor old guy. He's lost the magic touch. And he said, and he pulled a card out of his pocket. And he said, is this it? And it was like the 3 of hearts or something, whatever it was. And I said, no. And I was, you can see on the camera, I'm like, I was actually genuinely concerned. I went, oh, I don't want him to do magic. We'll have to cut this because he can't do the magic. And then he kept pulling the card out because it was really long. The card was about that long, and it was the 9 of hearts, and it was what the big card I chose. So I was, you know, he did some good magic. So he was a kind of big surprise to do. You know.
I just want to ask, did Craig Charles ever ask you to enter into Robot Wars?
Oh, no. No, I went to see a recording once, which was really good fun. There was a lot of talk at one time of doing some kind of Robot Wars scrap heap crossover, but then it's the channels get all moody. So Robot Wars was BBC and Scrap Heap was Channel 4. But there was a lot of talk of doing a kind of celebrity scrap heap. And the 2 teams that we were trying to get, the people who were keen to do it was Stephen Fry on one, which was the Posh Boys, and Craig as the leader of the other team, who would be the Scousers, or the Scouse Bastards, I think is what Craig was called. And you know, it was all that stuff that Stephen Fry would, you know, who is a real keen engineering fan and loves cars and all that, but he just wanted to sit in a comfy chair with white gloves on while some nice young men did all the work. And then Craig wanted to get all the parts he wanted from the car park of the crew cars and like leave them all up on bricks. when he stripped the engines out. But so it was a real shame. It was all to do with insurance and getting, you know, oh god, it was a pain in the ass. So it never quite happened. You know.
What was it like actually acting in the costume for Crichton and just your general day of wearing it?
It's hot and embarrassing because of the heat. If you're that hot for that long, no matter how many showers you've had before, you end up a little rancid. You need a wet wipe at the end of a long day, a very big one. And it's very uncomfortable, and it's very funny because I'm working with three really funny blokes who make me laugh all the time. You know? So there's a lot of corpsing and cracking up and sitting in Starbug when we're meant to be going around corners in space where there's no gravity. You know, we have a lot of discussions about space-time, gravity, gravitational pulls, G-forces. Chris is very good on that. Well, the G-force in such a situation with low gravity here would be fairly minimal. We would not lead to lean, gentlemen. Why are we leaning? We do a lot of leaning acting. So it's basically, there's a kind of trench humour on Red Dwarf that keeps us going on long days like that. You know, and when the audience is in, it's just the most amazing atmosphere. It's really good fun. I think because none of us are sort of trained, proper, old-school actors. We're all cheap, shallow show-offs. I think I'm saying that now. Don't tell the rest of the cast, because they're all highly skilled and talented actors. But you know, so we interact with the audience much more than probably a lot of people do. I mean, you know, quite often Dan and Craig would be sitting up in the audience. Craig would be sitting on someone's knee. You know, and there's amazing photographs of us watching pre-recorded footage, and we're just sitting in the audience with the audience, and I'm just watching because I want to see what it looks like, and then there's people around you just going, "Oh my God, that's Crichton sitting next to me." Right? It's sort of normal for us, but you know, it's obviously weird. But mostly it's amazing fun, but very hard work. But it's, you know, one of the things Doug said to me this year was, it's difficult because it's good. Because what we're trying to do is we're doing too much with the budget we've got, with the time we've got. It's very, very ambitious, Red Dwarf. It always has been, and it's incredibly difficult to make. And everyone who works on it, all the other actors, all say, you know, that's the hardest bloody TV show I've ever worked on. I don't know how you do it, and we don't know how we do it, but thankfully we do. Thank you.
Were there any challenges on Scrappy that went horribly wrong?
Oh yeah. Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, they mostly went fairly wrong. I mean, it was always touch and go. Well, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if some people remember the car flingers, when we did car flingers. That went wrong on a catastrophic and quite dangerous level. Thank God no one was standing anywhere near it. That was a trebuchet that was going to launch a Mini, and it just tore itself to pieces, like, very dramatically. There was only one team ever in the whole series. So we did 14 series, it was 10 here, 4 in the States, and countless other kind of road shows and you know, things like that. But there was only one team I remember where they really were so rubbish they didn't actually make anything. So there was really only one where we really did cheat. I'll say this because I always used to deny it when we were making it, but there was one where at the end of the day they'd done really good talking and they'd collected loads of stuff. They hadn't actually made anything after 10 hours of us going, "Please make something!" And so in the end we led some tyres up against some metal on a table and put a kind of steering wheel at the front, held on with tape, and then we shot it from a distance. I go, "I can't believe it, they've actually done it!" And they've done nothing at all. So we had to delay the next day, so our engineering team built them something that looked like it might do something, and they broke it immediately, and that was the end of it. But that was one team out of, you know, hundreds really, and they were amazing what they made. And yeah, a lot of disasters. Luckily, no serious injuries, lots of burns and cuts and bruises. But when you consider how dangerous some of the things were, rocket trains, and you know, it was amazing that we were very lucky. And flying, you know, that's fairly dangerous. No one drowned because anything we put in water sank almost instantly. So you know, there was a lot of dangerous stuff. I got quite a bad injury because I learned that was in America. I learnt this great sliding technique that a stuntman showed me. I shouldn't do my own stunts, and I was very proud of it. And I was standing on the top of a car, and I jumped and bounced on the roof, and it really didn't hurt. And then slid down the bonnet. It was like a pile of cars. And when I did it the first time, it was perfect. They weren't filming. I was like wanted to test it, so I did it again. When I slid down the front of the car, I stupidly kind of over-dramatised it by throwing my head back to make it look more dramatic. And what I didn't realise, there was a bit of glass in the windscreen of an old car that went right up the back of my head. And heads really bleed a lot. It didn't really hurt because it was a bit of glass, so it was, you know, but it did kind of dig in a bit. So I was kind of hanging on a bit of glass. So that bit hurt a bit. But it wasn't like agony. But what was shocking was when I took my shirt off, it was just red. I mean, it was so good. So I had 4 stitches down the back of my head. So that was I think probably the most serious injury, and it was because I was a twat rather than.
Do you ever like hang out with the cast of that show?
Yeah, yes, quite a lot really. I mean, we see each other quite regularly, and we always have. I mean, we're very good mates, so yeah, we do see each other. I mean, sometimes at events like this, there's been a few that we all do. It's very rare that we can get all of us together in one place, but then we do the commentaries for the DVDs, and we do PR stuff together. So we do see each other quite a lot.
Second technician room.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. My first question is, what's it like working with the rest of the cast on the Red Dwarf?
I mean, it's huge fun, as I was saying earlier on. I mean, it is remarkable that, we've been working together for 27 years. We get on very well. I mean, we come from very different walks of life, and yet we all get on. And there isn't one person that doesn't get on with another. I mean, everyone gets on with everyone, and it's very collaborative, the atmosphere. So there was a brilliant moment in Series 10, which I've always remembered. And Chris and I were waiting to go on, and Danny and Craig were doing a scene. And Danny is this brilliant actor that doesn't really ever rehearse. It's quite hard for the rest of us, but we've all got used to it. So he'll just be on the phone or text or tweeting when we're trying to rehearse, and he never knows his line, and he never looks at the script, and he doesn't know what's going on. Then on the night, he's absolutely brilliant. That's when we first see him do the performance. And I've been slogging away trying to learn my lines, and Danny just comes up and goes, yeah! And gets a huge laugh. But when he did one line that we'd never heard him do before, because he was too busy on the phone, and it got a big laugh, and Chris was behind him, and he went, yes! Like that, because it's for all of us, So if one actor gets, so there isn't that kind of competition where I'm the funniest guy on the room, There's a huge amount of support. So when any one of us gets a big laugh, it's always shared between all of us, which is shows that it's a nice group to work with.
My second question is, have you ever met the actor who did Crichton on the second season?
Yes. So his name's David Ross. And I'm not allowed to say if he may make some sort of appearance in the new series, or not. But he was the voice of Talkie Toaster. So when he went years ago, when he did Talkie Toaster years ago, Talkie Toaster, which has been in the garbage hole for the last 26 years. So I did meet him, and he was very grateful that he wasn't doing Crichton anymore. So it was not like meeting a bitter actor whose part I'd stolen. He was very glad, because I think his costume and makeup were much harder to deal with than mine. So.
Final question: if Crichton was to ever be killed off in any future series, and the choice of how he died was yours, how would you kill him
I don't know. I mean, I certainly would want to have a Sparehead experience. I think he needs his head on a shelf. He needs to meet Sparehead 3 again. What are you doing here, you bastard? I loved Sparehead 3. That was the most uncomfortable thing, shoving your head through a hole in a shelf. But they'd sawn that it would fit. No, it was bloody agony. There's a chair for you to sit on. No, it's too low. That was not a comfortable day, but it was great fun doing. Apparently, it was. Doug thinks it was. I was doing his dad. That's what his dad sounds like. I never met Doug's dad, but apparently that's how he talked. Doug, why are you writing that rubbish? So anyway, I don't know. I think I don't know how he should. It's difficult to know, because he'd have to be kind of, taken apart and packed away in a box. I don't know how you kill Crichton. He's been blown up and cut in half so many times, squashed into a box. He's had a tough time.
Next question, please.
First of all, I'd like to say thanks for doing the signing thing.
Oh, that's all right.
And my question, which I've just thought of now.
What time is it? That's what
Yeah. If you were to play any character in Red Dwarf that isn't Crichton, who would you play?
Oh, yeah, no, we've been asked that a lot. I don't know, because I just couldn't imagine doing it. I couldn't imagine doing anything other than Crichton. I mean, because I think the rest of them are very, very good at what they do, and I'm not subtle enough. If I haven't got a load of rubber on my head, I'm just rubbish. I just can't do it. I've done a bit of other acting in other shows. I was in Bottom with Rick Mann and Ada Edmondson years ago. That was good fun. But you know, I don't tend to do I don't do acting, you know, in any other role, and I sort of got used to doing Crichton. I can't imagine that I would be. I suppose the obvious one is that I could have a go at being Rimmer, but I wouldn't be anything like as good as Chris. So. And now I've seen them all being mechanoids. They're all bloody good at it, which is really annoying. It's quite bitter.
Crichton's accent is quite strange, you can't quite place it. How did you think of that?
Well, it was, when I first started working on it, what we didn't want was a sort of British butler type, you know, I always get it, R2-D2 and C-3PO. C-3PO, isn't it? Wait a minute, which is the dustbin? R2-D2. So C-3PO is a sort of, no, Mr. Lister, sir, I'm a robot butler, I'll clean your toilet. And that would be kind of, oh no, it's kind of been done. And Marvin the Paranoid Android had a British accent. So then I did do it as Swedish, and there was a lot of jokes being written about that he had, you know, he was a very safe robot with side impact bars and high safety rating. And probably cheating on his emissions. And so I did a sort of Swedish accent, and his name was Clayton. Oh, hello, Mr. Lister, have made you breakfast. And then Craig started punching me, so that was and so then I spent a few months the year before I started on Red Dwarf in Vancouver, and the Vancouver accent was really extraordinary, because it's actually a kind of Scottish-American accent, and they do say things like oot and oos. And they'll say, well, let's go out tonight. And you go, God, that sounds a bit Scottish. You know, it's weird. And then you realise that there's an enormously high Scottish population, particularly in Western Canada. And they're really nice people, and they don't like the Americans. Not that there's anything wrong with the Americans, but so it was an attempt to do a Canadian accent, which was a very stupid thing to say when I was in Vancouver many years later at a convention, saying, well, a sort of Crichton sort of vaguely based on a Vancouver accent. No, it isn't. You know, sorry, yeah, because so it just was a sort of hybrid, vague American accent that I could maintain, and it gradually kind of settled into what it is now. I've got no idea what I say or how it works. When I read the script, Crichton takes over. I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, it's a very odd feeling. It's just, oh, sir. I seem to have been discombobulated. I don't know what it is. I've never met an American who it would be quite disturbing if you actually met a genuine, just on the street. Can you tell me where Times Square is? Oh, yes, no problem at all. Join in. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's just what it is. I'm scared now.
I only have one question.
Okay.
Rise before Zod.
Oh, sorry.
Now kneel before Zod.
There's limits. There's limits. It's not a contractual obligation. Okay.
Did you actually have a question?
You did very well. Thank you.
Did you have a question, or did you just...
No, just one.
Zod does not need questions.
You stay safe your mind. You guys are all being funny on the show, hilarious to work with, but which one's the joker out of the pack? Who's going to be the one who's going to make the other one laugh the hardest?
I think it's pretty universal. I mean, certainly in the past, in terms of practical jokes, it was definitely Craig, which was just non-stop. I mean, it was, and so the kind of one that was certainly for many years, the thing, because I had such trouble struggling with the lines, and when your head's boiling in a rubber sack, you know, it just is hard to keep it. So I would be the one who screwed up my lines a lot. And then I'd always have a script with me that was all carefully marked up with little notes and things like that. and I'd be kind of going over it, and then suddenly I'd smell burning, and Craig had just come up, but I hadn't seen with his lighter and set fire to my bloody script, so it was on fire. On a set where there's no naked flame and don't, you know, it's a dangerous thing. So that happened a lot. Or he'd say, Bobby, I can't remember this next scene, what is it? And I go, oh, well, it's here, it's this one here. Give him the script, and he'd just walk out and throw it in the bin. And that he did it so, and what was so annoying was I'd always fall for it. He'd do the same thing. And then when we came back, so we had 11 years off, and we were doing Back to Earth, day one, and I had my script then. I was so nervous because I hadn't done anything like that for years, and I had my script all marked up with special highlighters and different colours and notes. And he just walked in, Bobby, what scene is this? Oh, it's scene 3. We're doing scene 3 where we get, you know, oh. Walked away, put it in the bin. 11 years later, I still fell for it. But now he's done that less this time. But I mean, I think we laugh at Dan the most, all three, the other three of us, because we just cannot believe how he operates. That he's on the phone to his mates when the audience is in and we're recording, and Dan is at, you know, he's going to do an entrance, so he's off the set, and we're in the set, and we go, and action.
So, yeah, I'll be there at 10 o'clock now. Yeah, see you then. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, we're just doing the live recording now. Yeah, it's going really good. Yeah, it's great audience.
You go, Dan? So Danny takes the biscuit, I think, from that.
What do you think you would have been doing if you hadn't done Red Dwarf? Is there any sort of normal jobs or?
I don't know. I mean, I think, well, no, probably writing. So, you know, I was writing a lot of scripts and plays and books and things before, long before I did Red Dwarf. So I would imagine I would have gone more in that direction. I didn't want to be on the telly. I mean, I didn't want to, and that's why, in a way, Red Dwarf was the perfect job for me, because in a sense I wasn't on the telly. So for the first 10 years I did Red Dwarf, no one kind of noticed me or came up in the street, or, I mean, it did happen very rarely, and particularly if I was with any of the other cast. And then it was a shock, because I wasn't used to it, you know, people would say things. And then obviously doing Scrappy meant suddenly I was, you're that bloke. I became you're that bloke. You're that bloke! And that was odd. I mean, there was a time when I was coming back from Scrappy very late at night, and had to get petrol in a garage when I still drove cars that had petrol. And a beautiful woman drove up in a beautiful open-top Mercedes. It was midsummer, and she had bare feet. I always remember it. She had a suede miniskirt and bare feet. It's the sort of thing a man of middle age notices. And she bought petrol for her Mercedes. She didn't even glance at me. Didn't even look, and I was going, I'm on TV. No, not even. She didn't even know I was not there. And then a white van pulled in with loads of pipes on the roof, and a bloke go, "Hey, Robert! Hey, can we do a selfie? Hey!" Not once did that woman glance over. Not once. And that just summed up my entire life.
I was also going to wonder, what's your personal favourite moment from Red Dwarf?
I mean, I'm going to say there's two, and they're linked in a way. So from series 3, Polymorph, the removal of the boxer shorts, the shrinking boxer shorts, because it just was impossible scene to do. It took so long to do it because the audience were laughing so much we couldn't do it. And there's now it's got nothing to do with the action in that scene, but the audience response from the new series. There was a moment where I made an entrance, and we just had to stand and wait for a long time while the audience just went absolutely ballistic. And so that's a new favourite, but I can't tell you any more about it because you've got to wait to see it. But there's some classic moments in the new series, and I never thought we'd get to that point again. That was sort of a highlight. That was just where it was insanely bonkers. You know, the one with ripping off the boxer shorts took so long, because Chris was coming in behind us and saying a line that we had to hear before we could do it. We couldn't hear him. He was like there physically. He was right near us. Couldn't hear a thing because the audience was so noisy. So that was a kind of a very strong memory.
Watching the episodes back, do you have any personal favourites?
Not really. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm always surprised if I do ever see them, and it's really one of the few things I've done on telly that I can watch, because I like watching the others. They make me laugh, and it's not me. It's Crichton. What will annoy me every now and then is I'll hear a flat vowel, a kind of English vowel, when it should be an American one, and that's going, oh, someone, I should have done that again. That's awful. But I can't really. I mean, certainly. Back to Reality. I think is a really clever. So there's some that I just think the stories are brilliant, and Gunman of the Apocalypse and Polymorph. Lemons in Series 10, I think, was a genius episode when we met Jesus. That was fascinating. And all Doug's theories about Judas being Jesus' twin brother, I thought that was fascinating. And I thought he'd made it up, and he went, no, there's a whole church of people who believe that. You know, I go, oh my God! And the Kennedy assassination in Series 8, I thought was a brilliant episode. What was that called? I can't remember what it was called. Ticket to Ride. Well done. Yeah, Ticket to Ride.
I would have thought, personally, I mean, we've been watching quite a lot of Red Dwarf in the lead up to planning this event, while it's on in the background while we're organising stuff. And it kind of occurred to me when, I think it's the episode's called DNA, so if the vast majority of the episodes you're not in the Granite-city, you must have got that script and gone, yes.
Sort of, no, I mean, I cannot watch that one.
Right.
You know, there's sort of clips of it on YouTube, and then someone says, "Is that you? Is that what you?" And I was going, "No, I don't know." It was so. I mean, it was so embarrassing as well because I had a proper when Crichton shows Lister the double Polaroid, which is a story in itself. I had a proper medical gown on that, that does up at the back bit is open. And what happened when I walked on in front of the audience? Oh, Craig managed to lift it up. Thank you, Craig. Hey, Bobby's got nothing on. I've got pants. But then the double Polaroid was a joke on both of us because we didn't know the crew they just tucked them under the mattress.
Right. Okay.
And I hadn't seen them. I knew he said the Polaroid's there. Oh, yeah. And action. Oh, well, I took this, sir. Showed them. I just gave them to Craig. I hadn't looked at them, and that reaction is. We still, to this day, do not know who posed for those photographs, but they were impressive, ladies and gentlemen. A Jacobean chair leg springs to mind. It was impressive. That's all I'm going to say. There was someone on the crew that was not. Of a diminutive stature. Craig claims it was him, but I kind of don't think that's true.
Hi, you've spoken a little bit about how you have quite a lot of fun with the other three main actors. Do you find that annoys normal actors that you work with?
I don't think so, because only from what they've said to us. So I don't know, and what they've said to the producers, and when we're not there. But I mean, I think that we're just naturally very inclusive. So when there's other actors on, it's quite fun for us because there's other people, so we're not kind of oh, they're the new people. We don't really do. We're pretty scummy, really. I mean, that's the thing. So we're very, and they all say, "Oh, it's brilliant fun working with you, getting immediately accepted," and we enjoy their performances. And there's some truly brilliant performances in the new series that were an absolute joy to witness. When we were doing them, they're great fun to work with. So I think the atmosphere amongst the cast is very sort of open to anything. We're always thrilled when someone else comes on. There's some quite big name people in the new series that. I was so thrilled, It was like heroes of mine that you suddenly meet and they're in the show, and then you find out they've watched it since they were kids and they loved it, and all that stuff. So I don't think we're horrible to guest artistes. Maybe we should be. Maybe I should throw the toys out the pram. Darling, do you know who I am? No, I don't. Will always be the answer. Thank you.
In one of the early episodes, you're using the dog program to battle a virus in part 10. There's a scene where Danny shoots 2 bullets in mid-air. How long did it actually take to get the bullets to land where they needed to be?
It would have taken hours, definitely. I mean, all those sequences. That was Gunmen of the Apocalypse, so that was filmed in the cowboy town in Kent, the Wild East, which was very funny and mad day. And that was because the thing I remember that was very difficult were the stunt horses, which they were stunt. They were sort of horses that were used in the circus. A French trainer, so they were French ponies that had been brought over from France. And they could do all these stunts, they could roll over at the right command and fall over and then get up and run off and stuff like that. But they were quite wild. They were quite energetic, I think, is the right thing. So things like the bullets. There was a shot where we had to time where we shoot and it ricochets off lots of things, and then it had to knock the sign and the sign do that at the right moment. and that worked in one take, and everybody was just like, how the hell did we do that? That's a miracle. That was very, because normally those things, there's like 15 goes at it. But there was one moment where the horses come up to Crichton, who's drunk, and they shoot at his feet to make him dance. You know, dance, boy, dance. The forewoman of the Apocalypse, and we'd been told that the horses are used to gunfire. They're not the problem because they were firing blanks. They're really loud. They're loud guns, and so they all rode up, and the horses all stood there and are very well behaved and very obedient, with experienced riders on them, the guys who were playing the baddies. And then they pulled their guns out and started firing. The horses went completely ancient. They just ran in all four directions. One guy fell off. They just went, and they were like, not like me riding a horse. I can ride a horse, but you know, I would have fallen off instantly. But he can't do that. And then they did the next shot. We did manage to do it in the end. They got used to the noise and they calmed down. They were still throwing themselves up with it. They were a bit frightened of the noise, which I felt sorry for them. But then it was our turn to get on the horses to do the ride into town. And so Danny and I had both ridden quite a lot. I grew up riding horses, I know how to do it, and I know how dangerous they are. Chris had never sat even on a donkey in the beach when he was a kid. He'd never been on anything, and he didn't like it because it didn't have pedals, brakes, or a steering wheel, or a walnut veneer dash, or nice leather seats. So he was terrified out of his wits. Craig, I think, had been on a donkey when he was a kid, but that was the only time, and he has no fear. So he wanted to know what happened when you do what cowboys do, which is whack it on the bum with your hat. And what they do is they run. When one runs, all the others go, oh, it's the running scene, I'll run too. So all four of us were charging across this field towards a gate onto a main road, which was busy. And thankfully, one of the crew managed to get to the gate before we got there. Well, I was thinking we're going to jump the gate, because these things aren't going to stop, you know. And I was trying to do steering, which I basically understand how you steer a horse. The horse took no notice. It wanted to stay with the pack, and just, so we were absolutely galloping flat out. And I do remember glancing at Chris's face. He wasn't happy. It wasn't his finest moment. But it was very funny. Once we did all survive, no one fell off, thank goodness. But yeah, I don't remember the actual. It would have taken hours. And the doves, when I pick up the guns and they turn into doves, 2 hours. Because they were doves that you'd think if you throw a dove up, a living dove, it would go fly out. No, I went like that, and they went. They didn't even open their wings. They went, yeah, he's thrown us, yeah, whatever. So yeah, it takes a long time, all that stuff.
Obviously, you're very famous for Scrappy Challenge and Red Dwarf and Carpool. Is there anything you've done, writing or acting, that hasn't got the recognition that you think it deserves, or something that you would rather was more out there than it is?
I don't even want to bore you with the list. A huge amount. Yeah, no, I mean, there are probably 10 novels that I've written that have never been published, which I'm now enormously grateful for, because they were diabolically awful. And 40 scripts that have never made it past. You know, there's an enormous amount of that stuff that happens all the time, you know, that you try things out and it's just not going to work. And I've done 2 very memorable, I mean, brilliant, stunning stand-up comedy routines that were so bad, and didn't even get, you know, like if you get booed, then that means you've affected people and you've upset them. But if they're just sitting there going, why did you even bother? This is thankfully many years ago. So you have to go through that agony to do anything. But yeah, so there's plenty of massive, catastrophic, miserable, tear-inducing failure, from which one learns and grows.
You know, with the episode of the crossbone, who came up with the idea for the crossbone in the first place?
For the what, sorry?
For the episodes in series 10 where Lister's wearing a crossbone.
The crotch bomb, yeah.
Who came up with that?
I mean, that would have been Doug. Doug, we sometimes worry. We know Doug's wife very well, and we kind of worry for her. Because he comes up with these really disturbing ideas. That you have an explosive device strapped to someone's groin. And you just think, why would you think about that? You know? Then you see the costume and you put it on Craig and you go, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's a really good way of controlling Craig. Just put something explosive near his gentleman's. Near his double Polaroid, yeah.
Not with me, man, it's a triple Polaroid, thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all the scripts are really, series 1 to 6, Rob and Doug together, and then the series 6 to 12, as it is now, is Doug on his own, and it's just, I mean, the new season is just extraordinary, brilliant, really weird. off the wall ideas. You know. In fact, Doug's son, Richard Naylor, who's a really nice guy, is one of the producers on this series, and he's really brilliant at steering his dad. And it's quite weird. You think father and son is going to be, and they fight and they argue, but Richard's grasp of it is really good. And Richard shows how long we've been doing. Was actually in Red Dwarf. He was a page boy in the virtual jousting world that we went into in, I think, season 7, when Lister meets the king, and he's Lister of Smeg. It was Brian Cox, a wonderful actor who played the king. Lister of Smeg. But in that scene, the crowd scene, there's 2 little lads with their cloaks on and their tights on, and one of those is Richard, and that was his schoolmate. And his memory of that is that I was standing right in front of him, and the camera said, "Can you step back a bit?" And I stepped back and trod on his foot. This little 7-year-old lad, and he still, "You trod on my foot, and you didn't even say sorry." And I went, "Sure I did." And he went, "No, you just ignored me." I said, "Well, did I move that way?" He went, "No, you stood on my foot for like an hour." So I didn't even know his foot was there. He only had a little foot. I had massive boots on. I couldn't tell where he was. "Get out the bloody way, kids!" Bloody hell. So yeah, he says he's permanently traumatised by that. But he has been an amazing influence on the script, and very, very good man. He's now a grown up. Basically, he was 7 then, and he's now a bloody bloke. He's getting married this year, and it's like, oh my god, sorry.
I think this is probably going to be our last question, unless anyone else has anything burning to ask for. No. Doing shows.
Obviously, one of the best things about Red Dwarfs is the one-liners. What's your favourite one? Any of them ad-lib, or like both all written by Rob and Doug?
There is tiny bits of ad-libbing that usually at the end of a scene, if there's a little catchphrase or a little something, occasionally we'll get 1 or 2 in, and it's always an interesting, because they've just come out naturally as we're reading it. You know, someone will say some extra line at the end, and very, very rarely then Doug will nod and go, "Yeah, keep that." You know, it's very unusual. You think, well, so the only one I can remember at the moment is engage innocent whistle mode, engage. Now that came out of just improvising on the moment, and they kept in there. That's the only one I can remember. But certainly, Crichton step up to red alert. "You sure, sir? It does mean changing the bulb." was in the script. I mean, that was definitely a favourite line. It was one of those ones where you thought, yeah, that's probably going to get a laugh, and then you do it, and it gets a huge laugh, and you go, all right, good. I've got that. I can't remember. There's some. I can't remember what. There's a lot. I can't remember what. It's a banana. But I mean, that was 27 years ago. You know, it's terrifying. Just before I go, I just want to say, because there's not many of them there, but I just want to plug my writing. And they're all available on Amazon, they're all available as audiobooks, and they're all available as Kindle booky books. This is a science fiction trilogy, What I Wrote. And that's the 3 books. And that one's coming out in paperback this year, but it's still on hardback. And it's set 200 years in the future in a world that is not perfect, not wonderful, not utopian, but slightly better than it is today. And it's so that one's sort of vaguely about how we could possibly live with modern technology that doesn't shag up the planet, but is still really cool. And there is space elevators, so you can get to New York from London in about 20 minutes. And I've read a lot about this, and I talked to an astrophysicist and gone through it and how possible it is. And there's new materials that are already in existence today, like carbon fibre nanotubes, which are extraordinary. And I've seen some at Imperial College in London. They have carbon fibre nanotube string that has a breaking strain of 700 tons, which is just bonkers. It doesn't make any sense. And so if you had a thread of this that went up to a satellite, and you just have a thing that clips on and crawls up, you could get into space without using rockets. And that's theoretically possible, but one of the mistakes, which is in the book, which I'm revealing now, is I placed the satellites 65 miles above the Earth's surface, like really like out in deep space. And then a physicist that I know, who's at Edinburgh University, wrote me a lovely email after she read the book, and she was really impressed with it, she liked it, she thought it was marvellous, but she said, the one problem you've got is if that was the case, and there was a satellite 65 miles up in the air, up in the sky, and with a thread coming down, and you were standing at the bottom, you'd see this ever-increasing shadow, and then you'd be crushed by the satellite as it fell to Earth, because it's not high enough. It needs to be about 390 miles above the Earth's surface to stay in a constant orbit. So that's a mistake. There is a mistake in the book, and in the reprints it hasn't got 390 miles, it's still 65. But I said, well, but would it work? He said, yeah, of course it would work. So the idea is, if you go up into space, you don't even have a jet to move. You let go of the string. The world is moving at 27,000 miles an hour. You'll get to New York in like that time. You clip on the New York one, you go back down, and you're in New York. Will it happen in our lifetimes? No fucking way. That's right.
And Randall, big round of applause for Robert Llewellyn.
On the table.
On the table, if you want to grab a copy of the book for the next little while, for the next hour or so. But,
Thank you.
Robert Llewellyn, ladies and gentlemen.